starting the slides. Even though this is, I'm a VFW service officer for the 4th District. I'm not accredited, but we have accredited VSOs coming on here, and we have a lot of them attending. This is not a VFW per se program. This is for all veterans. So we don't try to just say this is Brandon, this is the VFW. It's for any veteran, anybody that's interested. And we hope at the end of this that you go out there and you're able to really share things with other veterans and their families. So I'm going to start our PowerPoint, and I'm going to share my screen here. Let me get rid of some things here. Okay. I gotta go up here. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay. All right. So let's do this. And slideshow. All right, I hope you all can see this. So yeah. This is, we're going to talk about some VA benefits and a service officer workshop. And we're going to talk about the differences in service officers. And I'm going to introduce our players. And first of all, I think let me see what I go over here. Yeah. Derek Giffen, I don't think he's on yet. Derek, are you on? Well, Derek Giffen used to be the past director of veteran services for the state of Illinois for VFW. He's going to be presenting, especially he's working for the VA itself now as a legal administration specialist of Veterans Benefits Administration. Okay. And then we have Russ Meredith. Russ, are you on yet?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Russ, introduce to say a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, Russ Meredith. I'm a Navy veteran. Last time I served was 2003 in the Second Gulf War as a Navy Seabee. That's how I got my representation. My what's the word I'm looking for?
Eligibility.
Eligibility, yes. Eligibility is not a word that I normally use. But yeah, I've been working on and off with the VFW since I got since I came home. You know, local, of course, the district, and now I'm a assistant state service officer.
I'm in the middle of this right now. Chuck, it's hard.
A little over 8 years.
For a while, I'll sneak it to you. Okay, I got a million people on there. Okay, bye. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
I got to send a link to somebody in a second. The next is Chuck Bosco, who I have to send a link to again once I serve off of this. And he is an Army veteran. He works for the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs, and he is currently their appeals specialist. And he's also a retired military, a first sergeant from the Army Reserve. And Tom, if you want to introduce yourself.
All right, head on mute. I'm Tom McMahon. I'm the Assistant District Service Officer for the 4th District of Illinois, VFW. I was in the Army 10.5 years. First earned my VFW eligibility in Korea, and I did 3 tours OEF and 2 tours OIF. That's it.
And then there is me, Dutch de Groot. I retired from the Air Force as a master sergeant, but I started out in Vietnam in the Army, so I'm dual service. And like Tom, I was also a military policeman. Okay, I'm going to go over some of the things that we're going to cover here. Tom, do you have Chuck Bosco's email address there handy? Could you send him the link?
I don't think I do.
He should be on one of the emails that we sent to everybody.
Okay, I'll take care of it.
Okay, thank you. So we're gonna go over quite a few things today, and we're gonna go over what post-service officer's role is. VA healthcare eligibility, that's always a question a lot of people ask. What is a service-connected claim? And what a post-service officer, what their role is and what they should ask a client before they send them to an accredited VSO. And I want to make that distinction clear. We want assisting service-connected claim to the VSO and the role, how the service officer helps the VSO. And then the follow-up from the post-service officer on any clients that they might have. Then Derek Giffen is going to talk about presumptive conditions and especially about the PACT Act. He's an expert at that. And he's also going to talk about PTSD claims. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about dependency and indemnity compensation claims. That's one of my favorites. I get a lot of people that apply for that. Then we're just going to touch on pensions a little bit because they don't come across that often. I might get somebody asking for a pension once a year. We're going to talk about post-service officer tools and how you can use them, how it can make your life a lot easier. Then Chuck's going to talk a little bit about Service Connect, the ratings, percentage, and the appeal system. We'll end this if we have time with Illinois Veterans Benefits, which we're very lucky they have in this state. We're going to stop a couple of times for questions as well. Okay. And Tom, are you ready to go here? Tom,
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
Okay.
I just got the email sent. All right, the three subjects I'm going to cover tonight are what is a post-service officer and the role of a post-service officer, VA healthcare eligibility, and what is a service-connected claim. So what is a post-service officer? Post-service officers are local ambassadors of Veterans of Foreign Wars. Each VFW post has an appointed PSO. They're not elected, they're appointed by the commander. Post-service officers, we're going to refer to them as PSOs from this point out, are local advocates who assist veterans and their loved ones in navigating a complicated landscape of benefits. There's tons of benefits out there for veterans, not just through the VA, like Dutch just said, through counties and states. Also, different organizations have programs out there, local community colleges. So it's good to just kind of be abreast or informed of what's going on in your area and what's available. PSOs serve as a conduit to critical programs and services in the community, like I just said, but they are not accredited by the Department of Veterans Affairs for the purposes of representing claimants in their benefit claims before the VA. So if anyone knows anything about like electricity, a conduit takes the electricity from one point to the other, that is your job as a post-service officer. You're not to file claims for them, not to make promises to them, just have information. If you don't know the information, get the information and essentially kind of point them in the right direction to get what they actually need if you can't do it yourself. The knowledge PSO carries can help veterans and their survivors help and obtain services they often desperately need, such as death and indemnity compensation, disability claims, things like that, or even local food banks, stuff like that. So that is a post-service officer. Now the role of a post-service officer. I'm going to go through these kind of quick. Next slide. No VA eligibility rules established by law. That little icon to the left, the guide for post-service officers, every post-service officer should have one. I'm not sure if they still print those, but I know they're downloadable from the VFW website. It's a very dry read, but it is a wealth of information. Provide veterans and survivors basic knowledge about VA benefits. Advise veterans to submit all forms to an accredited VSO, Veteran Service Officer, for completion. Keep post members, veterans, and survivors aware of events, news, and information relevant to local, state, and federal veteran services and benefits. Read and understand the VFW Post Service Officer responsibilities and code of conduct for VFW representatives. Post service officers do not hold any legal standing to represent claimants in their benefits claims before the Department of Veterans Affairs. That is very important. That responsibility is for a VSO, an accredited Veteran Service Officer. What is a Veteran Service Officer? This distinction is reserved for individuals accredited by the Department of Veterans Affairs through the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the U.S. in accordance with Title 38 U.S.C. 5902, recognition of representatives of organizations in the VFW National Veterans Service Policy and Procedure. So a Veteran Service Officer goes through training by the VA. They have to pass a test. They get essentially licensed. They get accredited. They are licensed and bonded. So if veteran Joe Snuffy doesn't like the result of his claim and he wants to sue, the Veteran Service Officer is covered for that. Post service officers are not. Next slide. Now we'll look into some do's and don'ts. There's a lot more don'ts than do's, so just pay attention. Do not request or accept payment or any other form of compensation for the advice, assistance provided. Do not take possession of or release a claimant's personal information to anyone other than an accredited VSO or the claimant. There's a big debate about when you have people's forms that has their social security numbers and all their private information on it. It's okay to have that as you're getting it to a VSO. After you've handed it off to a VSO, destroy it. Don't just throw it in the trash. Destroy it. Shred it, tear it up. However, you don't want an identity breach to be your fault. On the flip side of that, you should take some notes and keep some notes just for your personal knowledge in case 3-4 years down the road, a veteran comes to you and says, hey, remember when you helped me with this? And you've helped 40 other people, so you have no idea. You can take some notes, but just basics, no social security numbers, anything like that, just a little bit of basics, what you help them with, who they are, where they're from. I keep their contact information. Okay, moving on. Do not identify yourself as an accredited representative because you are not. Now, initiate or participate in unprofessional conduct in the workplace or in public view. Always act professional. Represent yourself, your post, the VFW as a whole. Do not attempt to represent claimants before the VA in any capacity, such as signing forms on their behalf or representing claimants during VA hearings. You don't have the authority to do that. You don't have the knowledge that a VSO does. So not only are you doing something wrong, you could be doing a lot more harm than good for that person. Do not refuse service to claimants unless the claim is clearly fraudulent or there's unprofessional conduct by the claimant. That one goes with some common sense. If you just have your personalities just clash with a certain individual that wants something, hand it off to another post-service officer or call Dutch and I. We can either talk to the guy or we can take the case. There's a guidebook of all personnel within the fourth district that's put out every year. Just look up the name of another post-service officer and say, hey, can you help me with this? If the person's just a complete jerk, just let Dutch or I know and we can address that. Otherwise, don't refuse service. The most important one, do not promise anything. Don't ever tell someone, I think you'll get 70%, or I think you'll get such and such percentage, because you don't know. No one knows. So do not ever promise anything. Next slide. Post-service officer dues. Provide guidance to claimants and assist them in obtaining state and local benefits. Provide guidance to refer claims to the accredited VSO for assistance with obtaining VA benefits. Do conduct yourself in a professional manner. Do prepare the veteran for the process. Always use black ink when completing forms. And whenever possible, attend PSO training. And with that, on your own, just spend a little time when you have it, maybe half hour a week, whatever you have, to just do some research and increase your base of knowledge. Next slide. This is kind of a, I don't want to say chain of command, but these are the, so down at the bottom, you have people, post members, community members, just veterans that aren't VFW members. I'm sorry, that's community. Then you have post-service members up to the post-service officer, district service officer, all leads to the accredited veteran service officer. Next slide. All right, next topic is VA healthcare eligibility. Next slide. Okay. I'm gonna do my best to keep this simple because it's very complicated. Am I eligible for VA healthcare benefits? You may be eligible for VA healthcare benefits if you served in the active military, naval, or air service and didn't receive a dishonorable discharge. If you enlisted after September 7th, 1980, or entered active duty after 16 October 1981, you must have served 24 continuous months or the full period for which you were called to active duty, unless any of the descriptions below are true for you. You were discharged for a hardship or early out, or you served prior to September 7th, 1980. If you're a current or former member of the Reserves or National Guard, you must have been called to active duty by a federal order and completed the full period for which you were called or ordered to active duty. If you had or have active duty status for training purposes only, you do not qualify for VA healthcare. If you served in certain locations and time periods during the Vietnam War era, you are eligible for VA healthcare. That's the simple part. Those are just basic criteria. But per usual, with the VA and the government as a whole, everything is more complicated than that. So in the interest of keeping this short, I recommend you, someone say something? Or?
No, go ahead, Tom.
The best source of information for this is va.gov healthcare/eligibility. It's right there on the screen. There's a matrix and there's all sorts of different factors that they look at. And it would take us forever to go through that and everyone would just be confused. So just, if you're really interested in that, go to that website and it has all that. Next slide, please.
Can I ask a question about what you just said?
Wait, Art, we're going to have questions come later. I announced that at the beginning. So we will call out for questions. Otherwise, we got too many people here. Okay, so just hold on. We will take questions later.
All right,
Okay.
last topic I'm going to cover is what is a service-connected claim?
Oh, well, that is going to be Russ is going to start talking about this, Tom.
As I was.
Yeah. So Russ, if you want to take it from here. I hope Russ is there.
Yeah, I'm right here. I just having some computer problems, that's all.
Okay.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here. We appreciate you being here and your interest in what a service officer does. So what is a service-connected claim? Basically, it's as the slide says, it's service-connected means that the veteran is disabled due to an injury or illness that was incurred or aggravated by military service. Now, obviously, there's 7 different ways to get service
Hey,
connection.
listen, can I call you back? I'm on a Zoom with the VA right now, trying to get information on this Zoom thing.
Could you mute yourself,
Yeah.
please?
Yeah, I went to school for this. I'm learning stuff. So I will get back to you as soon as it's over.
John, mute yourself, John.
Take care, partner.
And we all enjoyed hearing your life story. Can everyone mute their microphones when they're not speaking?
Oh, yeah.
All right, we ready to go?
Yeah, go ahead, Russ.
All right. So there are 7 different ways. I'm not going to highlight all 7 different ways to get service connected. I'll dial primarily into just for 3. Direct, secondary, and aggravation. Basically, where you have, on a direct basis, where you have a condition that is a result of an injury, like the slide says, an injury, or, I'm sorry, Dutch, can you go to the previous slide, please?
Yes.
I'm sorry. There we go. Like the slide says, it's can be incurred or aggravated, or obviously on a direct basis, such as if you're a Vietnam veteran, you come down with prostate cancer. That is what is known as a direct basis. Or if you have type 2 diabetes, that can be awarded on a direct basis. Now, if you have peripheral neuropathy, that can be awarded on a secondary as well as a direct basis, but a lot of times, most times, it's awarded on a secondary basis because type 2 diabetes does in fact cause peripheral neuropathy. For those of you who may not know what peripheral neuropathy is, it's a tingling and numbness in your hands and or your feet. A lot of people suffer from that. It's obviously some people have it worse than others, but nonetheless, it is a nerve damage, a condition that results from nerve damage. So VA recognizes that a disability is related to a veteran's military service in some way. Once service connection is granted, then a veteran is eligible to receive VA disability compensation benefits for that condition. So the presumptives, if you understand what presumptives are conditions that VA has conceded is a result of a person's or a veteran's military service, such as prostate cancer for Vietnam veterans, COPD is one of them. Asthma is one of them. Another one, as well as liver cancer, I believe, and even for those who have served in Camp Lejeune, colon cancer. That is a presumptive. That just came out under the PACT Act, and Dutch will talk more about that. A veteran's medical condition was directly caused by military service, occurred while in the military, but not necessarily on duty, i.e. a car accident at night, was aggravated by military service, or was caused by conditions that are themselves service-connected. That's pretty much self-explanatory. If I've seen veterans who get injured playing basketball, they get service-connected for an elbow injury or a back injury. They were coming home from leave and they injured themselves or whatever, they can get service connected for that. Obviously, the one things that the veteran cannot get service connected for is in a case of malfeasance or a self-inflicted injury. So continuing on, what is a service-connected claim? Both of these must be true. The veteran had to have served on active duty for training, or active duty training and have a disability rating for their service-connected condition. At least one of these must be true. A veteran got sick or injured while serving in the military and can link this condition to their illness or injury, called an in-service disability claim, or had an injury or illness or injury before you joined the military and serving made it worse. That is what is called aggravation. You had a slight back problem coming in, you endured boot camp, and you injured it in boot camp, you can get service connected for that. Obviously, you can't get service connected while you're still active duty, but if that disability or if that pain or injury persists, even after you get out of the military, obviously the next day you can file a claim before you get out, but the effective date obviously is not until the last day or the day after you leave the military. But that is known as a service connection by aggravation, like I was talking about earlier. Had an illness or injury before you joined the military. Okay, I already said that. I'm sorry. Have a disability related to your active duty service that didn't appear until after you ended your service. So an example of that would be if you were served in active duty while in serving in Vietnam. I'll just give you an example here. You're serving in Vietnam, and you came down with prostate cancer, and you have a prostatectomy, or you have it treated with either chemotherapy or radiation therapy, and later on you develop, and which is normal, usually the case, you have residuals from prostate cancer, where you have a problem voiding. You can't control your urine. You have to wear absorbent material. You can get service connected for the residuals as well. Next slide, please. Okay, submitting the claim. Only the VSO, a veteran's, an accredited service officer, can file a claim. I'll just want to put that out there first and foremost. Like the gentleman a while ago was saying that a post-service officer cannot submit a claim because they're not accredited. So anyway, going on with the slide here, the VSO or service organization, your relationship, certified VSO that fits the veteran's needs. VA awards benefits based on the date of claim, either the date that the 21-0966, which is the intent to file, basically where you're telling the VA you intend to file a claim. You're not yet ready to file a claim. You have to gather medical evidence, lay statements, medical opinions, what have you. And it is good for 1 year from the time VA receives it. Appointing the service organization, that's a VA form 21-22. That's the form that's used to establish the VFW as your advocate or your official VA representative. Obviously, well, when I say VA representative, doesn't mean that obviously the VFW service officer doesn't work for the VA. It just means that the service officer for the VFW is your, more or less your liaison between you and the VA. The claim form of 21-526EZ, that is the general claim form where you file for disability. With supporting documents, marriage, certificate, divorce, decree, DD-214, other documents, those are all helpful when filing a 526. Personally, I wouldn't necessarily file a marriage certificate or a divorce decree with a disability claim. Only time I would add a marriage certificate is if a veteran is awarded at least 30% service connected and they are married. that's when a marriage certificate is necessary. And of course, the DD-214 is always good to have because obviously it tells what the veteran did, where they served, what years they were, what year they went into the military, what year they got out, the rank, and of course, the character of discharge. Next claim, DIC claim, our next item here, DIC claim form 21P 534A. Derek will talk about DIC, but the form that's necessary in order to file for DIC is the 534A. And it's also the form that's used to, that a surviving spouse or child of a deceased veteran would use in order to claim benefits. That's where, again, that's where the marriage certificate and DD-214 would be necessary. When sending form, make sure it is the latest update. That is obviously for us service officers that are obviously submitting claims on veterans' behalves. Sometimes there are veterans, or I should say veterans, who try to file claims on their own via e-benefits, that's through va.gov, on their own. They don't always use, they don't know to use the most recent update. So sometimes, or I should say many times, the VA will send them a development letter saying that the form that you're using is obsolete and please use the most up-to-date form. And that's when I normally get a call and say, Russ, what's the most recent updated form for this, for the 534? Okay, well, the one came out in 2023. So moving on, suggest that the VSO and client fill out forms. So we've gone over the two major forms that are necessary in order to file either a disability claim or a claim for a surviving spouse or child of a deceased veteran. Next slide, please. Finding the right VSO, very important. You definitely want a VSO that's going to be your advocate. There are some, I hate to say, but there are some service officers out there that more like a robot. They don't, they just do what the veteran wants them to do. They don't ask any questions. I ask questions because I want to know, one, a little bit about the veteran themselves, and two, exactly what they're suffering from. Because if they, for previous slide, Dutch.
Oh, I'm sorry. My cat stepped on it.
Oh, okay. Very good. So yeah, you definitely want to get at the right VSO who's going to act on your behalf. Yeah, the VSO world busy. I'm not sure what that means. The VSO world busy.
Oh, I don't see it.
On that current slide, Ron, it says the VSO world busy.
Is busy.
No,
Is
not that
busy.
one, the previous one. Right there, the second point.
Oh,
It's a misprint. The
the
VSO
misprint, yeah.
is
World is
Girl.
busy.
Somebody
busy.
that went to Chicago public school.
Oh, okay.
understood.
All right. Okay, very good. Thank you for that clarification. Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay. Yes, the VSO's world is very busy, at times overwhelming. Overwhelming. Okay. Anyway, another misspell. That's okay. But I understand what you're trying to say. That's okay. So yes, the world of a VSO can be busy and at times overwhelming. Right now, our Chicago office is swamped. Needless to say, with the departure of Derek Giffen going to the VA, we've got 2 service officers doing the work of 3 service officers. But that's okay. We're not overwhelmed to the point where we just need to throw in the towel. But we're answering calls, we're returning calls, answering emails, still seeing clients in our office, and doing the everyday work of a service officer. know the VSO and Veterans Assistance Commission. Veterans Assistance Commissions, they are located pretty much, I believe, in each county, called the VAC, Veterans Assistance Commission. They fall under the auspices of the IDVA, I believe. And also it's good to know because, well, first off, to know that the service officer at a VAC is not necessarily accredited. Some are, but typically they are not. And always, if you file a claim with the Veteran Service Officer, a VSO with the Veterans Assistance Commission, make sure or ask at least if they are accredited, because obviously you want to make sure that any information you give them, they hand off to an accredited service officer. And the reason why I say that is because there have been times where a veteran has come to me and said, well, I gave so-and-so my information down at the whatever county, the VSO, and I'm sorry, what's that sound?
There's a lot of people here, Russ.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. A little distracted. I apologize. So yeah, a veteran came to me and said, yeah, Russ, I gave my information to this guy down in whatever county. And he said he was supposed to forward that to me. And I tell him, well, I've never received it. So he had to go back to that service officer for the Veterans Assistance Commission and get the information, the documentation he had given them, because they just more or less took it and set it on their desk. They didn't do anything with it, potentially losing losing money for the veteran. Last but not least, make it easy for the veteran. A big part of being an effective service officer is taking all the weight off the veteran's shoulders. Veterans, sometimes when they want to file claims, they don't know how to do it. They don't know where to turn. They sometimes are overwhelmed. They can't, sometimes they have conditions where it prohibits them from just talking with people. And that's okay. And I totally understand that. But as a service officer, an effective service officer, it's vital for the veteran to feel very comfortable with you. Again, at the top, it says finding the right VSO. The veteran has enough on his or her plate, and they don't need the hassle or the headache in some instances of filing a claim on their own. You explain the process of filing a claim, what service connection is, what to expect after filing the claim, and hopefully by the time that they leave your office, they feel a lot easier about things. Make sure they get a business card, and they go about their day resting easy, knowing that their claim has been handled by the right person. Next slide, please.
You're actually done there, Russ?
Oh, all
You're
right
good.
then.
Thank you very much.
All right. Is this my slide, or is this the next
No,
person?
this is mine. I'll take
Okay,
this.
very good.
Okay, and this is for the post-service officer only, but again, can reiterate that you don't want to take any sensitive information, but as you see, I've got a folder structure that I keep on my computer, and when I have an email to the veteran, I make a PDF copy of it and I put it in a folder and I put their last name, because maybe 5 years later, that veteran might call me and I go, who the heck are you? And I have to look that up and I go, oh, I remember. Because over the course of time, even a post-service officer, you might have a couple hundred veterans that you're helping. So I also, after the veteran submits a claim to the certified VSO, I ask them to update myself, say, how are you doing? Do you need any help? Are you having trouble contacting the service office? Because every one of these certified VSOs, sometimes they have 200-300 claims they're handling at one time. they are overwhelmed, and the post-service officer should try to help them. Also, when I'm dealing with a veteran, I ask, where are they at? So even if they're not a VFW service officer accredited, I want to get them some kind of help. So I use a lot of different VSOs, and I want them to be accessible near them if possible. Also, I want to get the one that has an expertise in one field that might be able to help them. The other thing I always ask a veteran, besides the original claim, is, do you have anything that's secondary or service connected to that we want to make sure that we make that claim with the certified VSO to begin with. And with that, I am going to take some questions here. Okay. And I'm going to just stop the sharing screen, and I can see everybody. So let me go on chat too, because we might have some chats. And let's see. Art, you had a question before, right?
Yes. What if your injury happened during your 2 weeks of active duty for training?
If you better get a line of duty on that if you're talking about the reserves. That could very well be a claim, but you better make sure you annotate it. Okay, that could be a problem there. And then I see, yeah.
What do you mean by annotate it?
Well, you've got to have records on it. Okay, you better have some records. It can't be just hearsay. You have to
Well,
have.
there should be records because they pulled out a wisdom tooth,
Okay.
but the Navy and the VA say they can't find my dental records. I mean, I've been asking about this since 1975.
Okay, I'll let Chuck Bosco, I see him on there. Maybe he could answer you.
Thank you, Dutch. Who's talking?
That
Art
is
Ellingson.
Art.
Art. Hello, Art. Okay.
Hey,
Here's what I know and experience.
this is Art speaking.
No, this is Chuck. Can you hear me?
I'm a new service officer with both 5151.
But Art, one question at a time. It's the other Art.
I'm
He's
sorry.
talking about other Art.
Okay. Am I on?
Yeah.
Okay. To answer the question for reserve and guard, you almost have to handle your own records. And the reason for that, if you have, okay, in somebody's instance, they had a tooth fracture and they had dental care. One, the commander of your unit is responsible to fill out what Dutch said is a line of duty statement. And that line of duty statement is going to have, did this happen while the man was in uniform? And the commander has to say, yes, that's your price tag. You gotta have that LOD. Keep in mind, if there's an emergency and you're going to a civilian medical facility or even a military medical facility, and if you don't have your records with you, they're going to start records on you. That's just normal practice for any medical facility, whether it's military or private. And you almost have to ask them for a copy of what was done. Otherwise, it's going to get lost in the world. The records are there somewhere. And if you're putting a claim in later on and you have the line of duty, you're going to have to tell the VA where that troop medical clinic or that dental facility or wherever you were is. They will try and get those records. But reservists and guard, you have to manage your own records. I mean, that's just the reality of the world. And in a perfect world, your records would follow you. But anybody that's been in reserves for a number of years, you know that's not true. You just know. So you have to be self-efficient and manage your own
Then what we
records.
need to do is tell this to our ROTC kids, because I'm talking about an incident that happened when I was at boot camp.
Well,
52
Art,
years
we're
ago.
not going to belabor. We got a lot to cover tonight.
Okay.
I think the question's answered. So we're going to move
All
on here. Derek, any other questions?
One question, Dutch.
Yes.
Greg Jacobs here. What is procedure for a post-service officer who wants to go through the testing to become a VSO?
Well, it's a full-time job, first of all. You know, it's not for something that you're going to be doing part-time.
No, I know that.
Yeah, you need to hook up with somebody to get accredited. Somebody that's as the VFW might have a service officer opening. VACs are mandated now by law. There was something that came up before. Yeah, VACs that are not part of the IDVA. VACs are their own. and they're mandated by law, but by Illinois law now, they are mandated to have VSOs, and that's a law. So every VAC must have certified VSOs. And that's a new law that came out last year. But those are the kind of jobs you have to have, Greg.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm Jeff Brunner, and I was just wondering, do you need to, if a veteran wants to file a claim, can he use a organ like the VFW's service officer without joining the post?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. Any VSO will take your claim. The VFW, the American Legion, you do not have to be a member of the VFW or American Legion. They will take anybody. Any VSO should be allowed to take any veteran. And that's why I do not just use the VFW when I send people to get help. I use all the different organizations, whoever fits a veteran best.
Thank you.
That's a great question. Hope I answered it. Okay, with
Yes,
that.
I did. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I am going to have Derek come on here, and we're going to talk a little bit about, well, I think we covered presumptions, conditions pretty well, but we're going to talk about the PAC Act here, and I'm going to play another slide. Okay, and Derek, you'll be on here. Let me go make sure I got. Okay. And this is really the meat of the thing here. So play.
Judge, before we move on, I just have a comment.
Sure.
I'm Bobby Scott. I'm the superintendent of Macoupin County VAC. I posted a link up for the audience. The press secretary of the VA, or I'm sorry, the secretary of the VA had a conference 2 days ago. And come March 5th, so everybody knows, the VA has opened up the medical health care eligibility, and it simplifies it a lot more than the slide that you had up. So I offer everybody to click on the link because it opens it up, not just for the PAC Act, but for TARA also, toxic exposures, to include the foam from the firefighters. And I know, just to save on time, please look at the link. March 5th, the VA is opening up the eligibility requirements for us to enter into the healthcare system. So again, just take a look at that link. It simplifies it a lot because they are opening it up. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I seen that 2 days ago, and basically they're inviting another 1 million+ veterans into the VA system, which is nice. It's really nice. That just came about. So Derek, I think you are going to be on here.
All right, can everybody hear me? I was having some audio issues.
Yeah.
All right, well, yeah, I'm going to talk about the PAC Act as when I was hired as a legal administrative specialist with the Veterans Benefits Administration, at the Chicago VA Regional Office's public contact team. One of the things that they wanted was a new PAC Act coordinator, so that's one of my new duties at the VA is to disseminate information on this big piece of legislation that is still, as Bobby Scott mentioned, in the process of being promulgated. So Dutch, if you can go to the next slide. All right, well, we were all in the military, and the military loves an acronym. So what does the PAC Act stand for? It's stands for Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson, honoring our promise to address comprehensive toxins, PAC Act of 2022. This video is a very heart-wrenching video that kind of gives the story of Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson and how his story kind of underpinned the motivation to push for the PAC Act, which was not easy. And credit to the VFW. Their legislative team in Washington, D.C. did a tremendous job of pushing it over the finish line. But given time restraints, I'm going to not play the video. If you do want to see the video, feel free to email me. My email is derek.giffen@va.gov, and I'll send you the PowerPoint presentation. You can see the video. But Dutch, if you can move to the next slide.
There we go.
All right, so what is the PACT Act? It's a new law that expands VA healthcare and benefits for veterans exposed to burn pits and other toxic substances. The law helps us provide generations of veterans and their survivors with the care and benefits they've earned and deserve. The next two bullet points just kind of reiterate that the PACT Act expands eligibility for healthcare and for benefits. So let's move to the next slide, Dutch. So the two main eras of veterans that are impacted by the PACT Act would be, Gulf War era and post 9/11 vets. It does have some provisions for Vietnam era vets as well, but just keeping, talking about Gulf War era and post 9/11 era vets. There's two main delineating dates for the Gulf War era. It would be on or after August 2nd of 1990. And if you were in or flew over the airspace of Bahrain, Iraq, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Somalia, or UAE, you are now eligible to file for presumptive benefits for some conditions that we'll get to in a slide coming up here. But then in terms of post 9/11 era vets, that would be on or after, of course, September 11th, and that would be Afghanistan, Djibouti, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Uzbekistan, and Yemen. So again, if you had boots on ground in those countries, or you flew over their airspace, you are now subject to presumptive service connection for a whole host of conditions that we're going to touch on in this next slide. Dutch, can you move to the next one, please? So yeah, as of August 10th, a long list of new conditions are now presumed to be service-connected due to various in-service toxic exposures. You should apply now at va.gov/PACT so that your claim can be processed and you can get your benefits. I'm not gonna, enumerate all of these conditions, but what I do want to note that I think is extremely interesting, and I think this was pointed out by Jacob Zimmerman from Kane County. I could be misattributing this, but he noted that there's over 200 different conditions and cancers that are now presumptive due to the PACT Act, because if you look at this list, you'll see that gastrointestinal cancer of any type, head cancer of any type, lymphatic cancer of any type, lymphoma of any type, reproductive cancer of any type. So the PACT Act has been very, very good in being general. Whereas with the Agent Orange presumptive list, you have to have the exact diagnosis on the list. With the PACT Act, it's estimated to be over 200 different cancers are now presumptive because the way this legislation was written, it was written very broad to the point where any type of cancer of the head or the reproductive system or any lymphoma or lymphatic cancer, of which there are many. Like I said, there's estimated to be over 200, presumptive cancers that are now easily granted service connection because of the broad wording of this legislation. So I just wanted to point that out. Again, I'm not going to list every single condition here. The key thing is to know where to look for these, and public health on va.gov's website lists all of these if you want to find them again. But I just wanted to make I wanted to point that out, that there's over 200 different cancers that are now presumptive. That's going to really help a lot of veterans and a lot of surviving spouses down the line. So Dutch, if we can move to the next one, please. So yeah, as I mentioned, the PACT Act it really benefits a lot of Gulf War era and post 9/11 veterans, but there also are some provisions in the legislation for Vietnam era vets. The two primary disabilities that are now presumptively granted service connection are monoclonal gammopathy, also known as M-Goose. This is kind of a precursor to another cancer that is escaping me right now. But the big one, and one that has been really pushed for years and years and years, is high blood pressure or hypertension. So that one's huge. If you look at the statistics, I think 1 in 4 Americans have been diagnosed with this condition. So it's really going to, help a lot of veterans. It's going to help a lot of surviving spouses because I've reviewed a lot of death certificates in my time, over 13 years of doing this work, and hypertension tends to be a contributing factor on a lot of death certificates, which really is going to bring up a lot of eligibility for compensation for surviving spouses as well. So it used to be, I remember when I was a service officer, I used to argue before a veteran law judge at the Board of Veterans Appeals for Agent Orange to be conceded to a lot of Air Force veterans who served on Royal Thai air bases during the Vietnam War. And, the VA would only really concede exposure to MPs and SPs because these Royal Thai air bases really used tactical herbicides on the perimeters to kind of tamp down vegetation to improve line of sight for guard duty and whatnot. But I did all kinds of arguing, trying to show how my appellant, came into contact with the border of these Royal Thai air bases, and it was usually a big narrative that we had to put, to show the veteran law judge. But now, because of the PACT Act, the VA just concedes Agent Orange exposure if you did serve on a Royal Thai air base during the Vietnam War. Also concedes exposure if you were in Laos or Cambodia or Guam or American Samoa or the Johnston Atoll. And I'm not going to go through the dates for all of these. You can find that information on va.gov as well. But this is really important because for a lot of my career as a VSO, I had to do a lot of arguing, showing that vets were exposed to Agent Orange at all these places. And because of the PACT Act, that's just now conceded. So Dutch, if you'll move to the next one, please. There's also radiation presumptives that the PACT Act now affords. Compensation, the cleanup at Eniwatok Atoll in Alaska, and there's cleanup on an Air Force base in Palomares, Spain, Thule Air Force Base in Greenland. Again, you can find these dates on va.gov, but again, it's just the PACT Act has really gone out of its way to expand presumptive service connection. And we'll talk about the ways in which they've expanded healthcare. And when you lump that in with like blue water legislation, there's a lot of veterans who have now been conceded presumptive service connection. But I just wanted to talk about how radiation presumptives are now on the table due to the PACT Act. So Dutch, if you can switch over to the next slide. Yeah, as I mentioned, it's not just veterans who are going to be, impacted by this legislation. We need to also talk about, survivors. If you're a surviving family member of a veteran, you may be eligible for DIC, which I believe Dutch is going to expound on a little bit more later. But you may qualify, a dependent child may qualify, a parent of a veteran could qualify for this benefit depending on whether they need support. We're talking about there may be accrued benefits. There may have been a veteran may have had a claim pending at the time of their passing, and because of the PACT Act, their surviving spouse can now attain that lump sum retroactive payment. There's also survivor's pension. That's a benefit that's primarily utilized by surviving spouses that may be in need of assisted living or nursing home levels of care. But because of the expansion of eligibility, a lot more surviving spouses may qualify for that benefit. And then we talked about, again, Dutch is going to talk a little bit more about DIC, but so let's move on, if you would, Dutch, to the next slide. This kind of just talks about other benefits. There's burial benefits, there's a burial allowance, there's education benefits if the veteran was permanent and total or died of a service, was permanent and total for 10 years or died of a service-connected condition. The surviving spouse may be eligible for what's called Chapter 35 benefits, a benefit called Dependents Educational Assistance. They may be eligible for health care through a program called Champ VA. There's VA-backed home loans, and there's also, and this isn't on the slide, but there's state benefits like property tax exemptions, property tax reductions. This kind of really is dependent on the state in which you reside. I think all or most of the people on this call are from Illinois, so they probably know about the property tax exemptions and the like. But want to make sure that we're not just covering federal benefits. There's also state benefits. Not sure about county, but yeah, you definitely want to be aware of the property tax exemption if you're in the state of Illinois. But let's move on to the next slide, if you would, please, Dutch. We got timelines here. We got VAs considering all presumptive conditions established by the PACT Act as of the date the bill was signed into law, August 10th, 2022. Potentially eligible veterans and survivors are encouraged to apply. VA started processing PACT Act claims in January of 2023. And then, again, as Bobby Scott mentioned, recently there was a story about how on the VHA side of the house, and one of the largest ever expansions of veteran health care, all veterans exposed to toxins and other hazards during military service at home or abroad will be eligible for VA health care beginning March 5th of 2025. And again, if you want to refer to the chat, Bobby put that link in the chat if you want to take a look at the verbiage.
24.
Oh, yep, March 5th, 2024. So yeah, a couple days from now. Yeah. Very good. All right, Dutch, let's move to the next one here. So yeah, this slide is just encouraging veterans to either file a new claim or a supplemental claim if they had a condition denied in the past. The same is true for surviving spouses. Presumptive conditions do not require proof that military service caused the condition. So, even if a veteran never filed for a claim and then died, the surviving spouse could still file for DIC. It's important to make that distinction there. So let's move to the next slide, Dutch. There's been a lot of scams out there. Part of the PACT Act, there was the Camp Lejeune Justice Act, and there's a pot of about $20 billion in there. So, all of the lawyers have been flooding to that section of the law. And so I'm sure you all have been contacted about that portion, but more generally, just be aware of PACT Act scams. As Russ mentioned, it's important to not file the claim by yourself. It's best to have a representative do it. And so don't try to do it by yourself. Try to find an accredited veteran service officer. And that's part of the one of the bullets in the don't section there, the pink one. And if someone comes to you and they are saying that they're accredited and that they can give you all this help in getting benefits from the PACT Act, ask what their OGC accreditation number is, because all accredited veteran service officers have an OGC accreditation number. And in this slide, there's a link to the accreditation tool where you can look that up and to make sure if they are legit. So you could, be cautious about, of aggressive companies, companies that make all big claims. Try to get an accredited veteran service officer to work with you. And again, you can always check to see if they have their accreditation number if you're suspicious. So I just want to make those three. I just want to expound and reiterate on those big bullet points regarding trying to avoid, becoming the victim of a scam. So Dutch, let's move to the next one, if you would, please. Yeah, this is just again encouraging potential claimants to visit va.gov/PAC to file a claim. Reach out to your veteran service officer. If they represent you, they could file a claim over their signature and get the ball rolling without you having to really fill out any forms. So it's a great service that they provide. Let's go to the next one, Dutch. And in terms of the Chicago VA Regional Office's public contact team, these are all the ways in which we could assist you. This is our address, our walk-in hours. Let's go to the next one, Dutch. And then, if you want more information, you can take a picture of these barcodes with your form and get more information on the PACT Act or, the VA in general, or you can schedule an appointment with the visitor engagement reporting application called Vera. You can get virtual appointments. You can get scheduled appointments. There's a lot of different options there. And then, Dutch, you could probably move through all of the rest of the slides in terms of the PACT Act, because the remaining slides have to do with just kind of inside baseball statistics on kind of the rollout of the PACT Act, because this presentation was originally designed to brief kind of the upper brass at VBA and VHA about the progress of the PACT Act. So if anybody has any questions, I could entertain those questions. But again, if you want a copy of the slide, derek.giffen@va.gov is my email. Again, I'll entertain any questions before we move to discussions about PTSD.
Derek,
this is, go ahead.
this is Kate Broadhurst. How are you?
Oh, I'm well.
So I've been contacted by a lady whose husband he was a Vietnam veteran. He's been dead 8 years. Are we going to find a lot of this coming back for DIC from ones that were previously denied while their husband was alive?
Yeah, that we're going to see a lot of that, and it's very important as a post-service officer that you find these folks and plug them into a VSO or direct them to the public contact team at the regional office, because there is one of the slides that I talked about said that if a claim was denied in the past, the VA will try to contact any survivors, but that attempt to contact's only as good as the information in the system. And if a vet's been dead for a while, then people move around, phone numbers change. So the VA may not be successful in making that contact. So a post-service officer can plug a surviving spouse into a VSO or the public contact team at the regional office, and that's how we're going to find these claims for DIC. Or reopened claims for veterans who filed long ago and then kind of forgot about it. So that's really where the rubber meets the road, and where post-service officers can really make a big difference is finding these claimants.
Yeah, Derek? Luckily our VAC's got 4 service officers that are accredited, so we're good there.
Nice.
Derek?
Yep.
Does this new presumptive rollout that's coming up next month, Agent Orange was tested in quite a few locations here in the U.S. prior to its distribution overseas. And the one, I read about it earlier in the month, the one place that comes to mind is certain areas at Eglin Air Force Base. Would any veterans who's having problems related to Orange be able to go to a VSO and file if he or she was stationed at Eglin or the other locations where it was tested here in the U.S.?
I would always encourage the filing of the claim. I mean, you can file those claims now, and we do. I mean, there was a base in Alabama that had a bunch of Agent Orange stored. I mean, it was stored all over the place. And so if you can get a medical opinion from a doctor that states that it is at least as likely as not that a cancer is related to being near tactical herbicides that were stored at such and such a location, then the VA will on the strength of that medical opinion oftentimes grant the claim. But, you know, yeah, it may be presumptive in the future. So I would just file, just erring on the side of it, again, eventually becoming presumptive.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, this is Doug Groupie. Can I ask a quick question about when you showed the locations where under the PAC Act, or it wasn't under the PAC Act, but Egypt was post 9/11, but the pre 9/11, the Desert Shield, Desert Storm time frame. Do you have any information on who I can check with? Because I searched a lot of places and they're saying, well, Egypt's not included in that. And it's like, well, I was there, so I'm just trying to find some information out.
Well, if it's not presumptive, then you, like with the last question, you still are able to elicit a medical opinion. And given that the vast majority of rating board specialists don't have medical degrees, they tend to defer to medical opinions. So if you can get a medical opinion about toxic exposure, I mean, the VA is likely going to elicit one anyways, the way they've been developing claims of late. So the claim still may be viable, but I'm not sure. You might want to reach out to a congressperson or a senator to lobby on getting that amended to add that area.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Sir?
Yep.
This is Service Officer from Post 805 in O'Fallon, Illinois, Christine Love here. I also recommend folks to get on the va.gov and complete the registries. There's the Agent Orange registry. There's several other registries on there for PACT Act and environmental exposures.
And the only thing I would add to that is that it's important to get on the registries, not only so the VA can test you against the new presumptive conditions so you know what conditions to file for, but also because a lot of the issues that are added to these presumptive lists are added due to statistical analyses. Not so much, scientific analyses showing the correlation, but statistical analyses that show that, vets who are exposed to Agent Orange are diagnosed with X, Y, and Z more prevalently than vets who were never in Vietnam. And that's how diabetes makes it onto the list, and prostate cancer and lung cancer and so forth and so on. So not only should you get on these registries so that you can get an idea of how to file a claim for compensation, but it could lead to future veterans having more conditions conceded as being presumptive due to the increase in statistical data.
Okay.
If I could add one thing, Derek, it would just be, and I worked for the VA for a little bit, the VBA and the VHA are different entities and they don't always talk to each other very effectively. So just make sure you're talking about the right organization.
Yeah, the registries are part of VHA, but they can help you with filing a claim with VBA. So thanks for that clarification.
Okay, with that, we're gonna move on to a PTSD presentation, because we do get so many claims for PTSD. I think it's worth going through rather quickly here, but with that, I am going to go to another slide that Derek made when he used to work for the BFW here. That's a younger Derek there.
That's a 24-year. I was 24 in that picture, so it was about 20 years ago. But regardless, Dutch already did the introduction, so we can move past that slide. So, this is kind of just a word jumble of words that come to people's minds when they think of PTSD. So let's move to the next slide. So yes, what is PTSD? Though only a compensable disability for VA purposes since the mid-'80s, PTSD has gone by several different monikers such as soldier's heart, shell shock, battle fatigue, and operational exhaustion. I've heard it described by medical professionals as the body's natural response to unnatural circumstances. So, a lot of the vets that I've worked with they've been afraid to file a claim for mental health conditions because they don't want to be seen as mentally ill or crazy. And it's very important that we disabuse people, of that, because like it's been described, everybody is different. Some people are affected differently by trauma, but the body has different responses to trauma, and PTSD is one of them, and has been, since time immemorial, since the beginning of armed conflict. But it's only really been given a diagnostic criteria in the DSM. Well, I think at the time it was maybe the DSM-3. We're now on the DSM-5, and PTSD is now, a well described, diagnostic condition, whereas before the mid 80s it wasn't. So Dutch, let's move to the next one. So yeah, diagnostically speaking, PTSD is a cluster of anxiety symptoms, but it's important to differentiate PTSD from just anxiety by itself, because while both are compensable, anxiety can only really be granted service connection if it's diagnosed, complained of, or treated during active duty service or within a year of discharge. And so let's move to the next slide. Yeah. Then go to the one before that. Yeah, PTSD, on the other hand, can be diagnosed days, weeks, months, years, or even decades after trauma and still be granted service connection. This makes PTSD unique in terms of compensable mental health diagnoses. Again, there are a lot of different mental health diagnoses, but PTSD, is the only one of them that doesn't need to show signs in service. So let's move to the next one. So yeah, the psychiatric community noticed that when the World War II generation of veterans began to retire during the 1980s, clusters of anxiety symptoms started to surface. Dutch, if you can go to the previous slide, please.
Sorry.
No worries. Yeah, the late onset is a unique characteristic of PTSD, as I mentioned. As with World War II, first-time PTSD claims for Vietnam veterans are common now that they too are reaching retirement age. All right, let's go to the next slide. So yeah, to get a clinical diagnosis of PTSD that comports with the DSM-5, you need to endorse at least one symptom from each of the 4 diagnostic categories. So the first category, lists it as intrusion. We also call it re-experiencing symptoms, things like flashbacks, nightmares, intrusive thoughts. You got avoidance behaviors. You could maybe avoid war movies or fireworks displays or crowds, or it could be very specific to whatever kind of trauma you endured during active duty service. But avoidance behaviors, oftentimes are symptoms that vets forget to talk about, but they're very important. You also have cognition and mood changes. Maybe you find that it's more difficult to feel or express emotion with the same ease you were able to prior to the trauma that you endured during service. A lot of the depressive symptoms fall under this category. Feeling alienated, inability to feel positive emotions, negative beliefs, blame, these all fall under that category. And then lastly, we have what are called arousal or reactivity changes. These are, irritability, aggression, self-destructive behavior, hypervigilance, sleep problems concentrating. Maybe you hear an engine backfire and you involuntarily duck or something like that. Those all fall under the hyperarousal category. So let's move to the next slide, if you would please, Dutch. Well, let's go to the slide after that, because I kind of already talked about the contents of that slide. So So you've been diagnosed with PTSD. Now what do you do? In terms of a claim for VA disability compensation, like with any disability claim, the diagnosis is the first requirement. Once a diagnosis has been rendered, and that diagnosis could come from a private psychiatrist or psychologist or a VA psychiatrist or psychologist, doesn't really matter. The only real difference is that if it's a private psychiatrist or psychologist, you're going to have to submit that evidence either at the onset of the submission of the claim or after the VA sends a development letter asking if you have any private records. But if you've been diagnosed by the VA, then you would just identify on the claim form the VA facility and the date of the diagnosis, and the VA can copy and paste that evidence into your claims folder. But after there's been a diagnosis, then we have to pivot to the next component of a PTSD claim, which would be the stressor. So if you want to move to the next slide, Dutch. Actually, let's move to the slide after that. So yeah, the big difference, I mentioned how PTSD is unique insofar as it could be diagnosed at any point of veteran's lifespan and still be granted compensation, whereas a diagnosis like schizophrenia or anxiety or depression or adjustment disorder or what have you would need to show signs in service. Even though there's that distinction, PTSD does have that second component that not only do you have to have a diagnosis, but you also have to complete what's called a stressor statement. So, once the VA acknowledges the diagnosis, then they're going to elicit the completion of a stressor statement, which again is the description of the trauma experienced during active duty service that the claimant believes to be the cause of their PTSD symptoms. So, Dutch, if you could pivot to the next slide. This is a picture of Audie Murphy, a very highly decorated soldier, and I'll get to why his picture is there on the next slide. So yeah, a stressor can be conceded. You might not have to complete a stressor statement if you've been awarded with a combat award like a Purple Heart, a CIB, Combat Action Badge, Combat Action Ribbon if you're a Marine, or any award with a V device. And again, this list is nowhere conclusive. There's all kinds of combat awards out there. But if you have one of these awards and it shows up on your DD-214 or in your personnel file, and you already have a diagnosis of PTSD, the VA will concede the stressor, and then they'll move on to the next step, which is, assigning an evaluation based on the severity of symptoms. But let's move to the next slide, if you would, please, Dutch. So yeah, what if you don't have one of the awards on Audie Murphy's uniform? Lack of a combat award does not preclude a veteran from filing a claim for PTSD. It simply means that additional development is required. So if we can go to the next slide, Dutch. There are two forms that the VA will elicit completion of in terms of completing a stressor statement. There's VA form 21-0781 and 0781 alpha. Let's move to the next slide, if you would, Dutch. So the VA form 21-0781 is completed if there's no combat award, and this is a form that's completed if you're claiming that your stressor is due to some kind of combat scenario. So let's move to the next one, Dutch. And then, yeah, stressor statement, VA form 21-0781 alpha. This one you would complete if your stressor is the result of some kind of physical or sexual assault. And so we could get into a whole class on MST or military sexual trauma, but that would probably, take us another half an hour to go through, all the nuance of that type of claim. But the VA does understand that the lion's share of sexual assaults during active duty service go undocumented. So the VA has different methods in which they can concede that a sexual assault did occur. They look for what are called markers. These could be changes in behavior, changes in work product, failure to thrive, failure to get promoted, requests for transfer, all kinds of things the VA could concede as markers that would allow them to concede that a sexual assault did take place. But again, that's a very complex subject. And so I just kind of want to make sure that you understand that the 0781 alpha, personal assault or sexual assault. Dutch, if you can pivot to the next one, please. So yeah, there, we have again the two stressors. The one that's the result of a personal assault. There's the one that's the result of a combat situation. However, in 2010, the VA did what's called a liberalization of the stressor standard. And so, if you're claiming that your PTSD is kind of the overall byproduct of living in mortal fear for your life or the lives of your subordinates, if you state that you were in fear of hostile military or terrorist activity, then the VA can concede fear as your stressor. So that's kind of a nuance when it comes to VA conceding stressor, but I want everybody to understand that even though the 07 and the 0781 and the 0781 alpha are the majority of the ways in which the VA will concede a stressor, you can also claim that that fear in and of itself was enough to, bring about PTSD symptoms due to, again, the liberalization from 2010. So let's move to stressors that VA won't concede. So yeah, while VA will concede stressors related to combat, physical, sexual assaults, there's some that they won't recognize for, even though the DSM-5 concedes that these stressors are enough to bring about symptoms. So let's move to the next slide, Dutch. So an example of this would be moral guilt or moral injury and survivor's guilt. So these types of stressor statements tend to be denied by VA, even though, again, the DSM-5 does concede that they are traumatic enough to bring about PTSD symptoms. So I just want to bring out that nuance about how VBA adjudicates these types of issues. So Dutch, if you can move to the next one, please. Okay, so I have a diagnosis of PTSD and VA has conceded my stressor. What happens now? And like with any other disability claimed after the diagnosis has been confirmed, there must be a nexus to active duty service. A nexus for PTSD is usually a formality, but not always. I mean, I have seen some circumstances where a veteran definitely has PTSD. They meet all the diagnostic criteria for PTSD. However, when they're asked by, the evaluation specialist what their stressor is, they talk about things that either predate or postdate their active duty service. So they do have a diagnosis, but unfortunately the thing that brought about those symptoms was not during active duty service. Given the nature of PTSD, again, this doesn't happen often, but it does happen. So I just want to, make that bit of nuance. But Dutch, let's move on to the next one. So yeah, what is a nexus? A nexus is a connection between a diagnosis and active duty service. With other compensable conditions, a nexus can be shown by a medical opinion, continuity of treatment post-service, lay statements, or the static nature of certain conditions. So let's move to the next one. Okay, so VA has confirmed the diagnosis of PTSD. They've conceded the stressor. They've provided a favorable nexus between the diagnosis and the stressor. What happens then? 38 CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations, which outlines, the different evaluations. We're talking about Part 4 here. So if you want to look at what each evaluation is, you can Google, Part 4, 38 CFR, diagnostic codes 9400 series, and you'll find what that evaluation criteria is. But there are 6 different evaluations for PTSD. There's 0, 10, 30, 50, 70, and 100%. And in speaking in very, very, very general terms here, a 0% is usually when there's a diagnosis, but asymptomatic. A 10% is usually when there's a diagnosis and there are symptoms. There's symptomatic symptoms, but not enough for a psychiatrist to recommend medication. 30% is usually when there's when there's your symptomatology for PTSD, and the psychiatrist recommends, the the prescription of sertraline or bupropion or mirtazapine or whatever the case may be. 50% is usually if there's meds are recommended and the severity of symptoms make family and occupational life more difficult. There really recently was a court case that kind of drew a bright line between the 50% evaluation and the 70% evaluation. 70% is essentially 50%, but with the addition of the symptom of suicidal ideation. So if that symptom is endorsed during a compensation and pension exam, that's enough to secure a 70% evaluation. And then the 100% evaluation needs to meet the definition of total social and occupational impairment. So if you're working, then the likelihood is the highest you can go is 70%. But I do want to note that two service members could experience the same trauma and be affected in entirely different ways. It's incorrect to presume that you and your battle buddy should have the same evaluation just because you experience the same trauma. So with that, I don't have any additional slides for PTSD. So again, if there are any questions, I would be happy to field those.
Great job, Derek. I think we're pretty good. I think you covered it all is what happened there.
Oh, very good.
We're gonna move right along. We're gonna have questions in a little bit here. So let me get through mine and then we're gonna have some questions, so save them up. Okay. And I'm going to go on. Not with presumptuous. Okay. VA dependency and indemnity compensation. This is something that, as a post and district service officer, I get a lot of. I'm going to say I might get 25% of my veterans cases with their family, with somebody that's surviving. DIC is a tax-free monthly benefit paid to eligible survivors, okay, of somebody that died of a service-connected. That compensation right now, I think, is around $1,600 a month for a surviving spouse. So at the time, that spouse must have been married to the veteran for at least a year. And of course, the veteran has to be deceased. If they have 100% disability rating for 10 years, it doesn't matter how the veteran passes away, that surviving spouse is eligible for DIC. I had one case where I got a call from a almost surviving spouse that her husband was in the hospital a couple of rooms down and she was trying to apply, and I said, ma'am, you have to wait till he's deceased. So it's as simple as that. I like to connect a story with some of these things. So a couple of years ago after Christmas, I'm in the parking lot with my VFW jacket, and a lady comes up to me, gives me a big hug and gives me a card. Thank you for your service. And she's around my age, and I just asked her, I said, what's this all about? She goes, I do it in honor of my late husband, and now my service officer and tenants are up. And I said to her, I said, wow, can I ask you, was your husband in Vietnam? And she goes, yes, he was. And I said, I hate to intrude, but can I ask you how he passed away? And she said he had a massive heart attack. And next thing on my mouth was, are you getting your compensation? She goes, what do you mean? I said, this is your lucky day. So long story short, she was eligible because ischemic heart disease is presumptuous for Agent Orange. The husband was in Vietnam, and she got her compensation a couple months later. But that is anything that can be attributed to service related is DIC. Again, it's easy to look up. Anytime I tell our post-service officers you're going to look something up or do some research, try the va.gov site because that's right from the a horse's mouth. So DIC is compensationable for the surviving spouse. That veteran that I talked about could have passed away probably 20 years ago. Well, that surviving spouse is eligible for DIC even now. But the thing is that it's not prorated. So it goes in by the time that the spouse would put in the paperwork. I'm gonna go a little quickly here, and I'm just gonna cover a little bit, talk about VA pensions and survivors pension benefits. And what that is, it's basically done on a means test, which means you really have to be at poverty level almost to get it. And I think the compensation right now, our credit VSOs can correct me, is probably about $600-700 a month. But they have to offset your net worth with a formula, and you have to do a lot of paperwork. I will get a pension benefit maybe once every 2 years myself. So I don't know how many come into the office, but it's something that absolutely a VSO has to go through, and then the family's got to take some accounting for this. With that, I'm going to go into the service officer's tools. And again, I'm talking about the post-service officer. Other things that you can use to help your community as a post-service officer. Again, I talked about the va.gov is the best reference that you can go through when you're trying to research something, because there's a lot of stuff out there and some of it's wrong. Keep limited data to clients, like I told you. Continue training like you're all doing tonight. A service officer at the post level should always have business cards. The post should buy them for him or her. And the more they go through, the more outreach that they are getting. Email, I use it all the time. That's how I like to keep track of all the veterans I help. And if I have to, I make a PDF of that email and I put it in a folder so I can reference it later. The Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs, which Chuck Bosco is here. He works for them. They're a great resource. They have a lot of their own VSOs all over the place. And they're very attuned, especially to some of the state benefits. The VACs, the county VACs, I can't say enough for. I work with several of them in Northern Illinois here. Great relationship. And if I have a veteran that's near one of their offices, I prefer to send them to them. Again, in Illinois, they are mandated to have accredited VSOs on board. Another place that I found is useful, and we even have a couple of people I think online here, is the townships. Townships can have an accredited VSO, and they'll be accredited from the National Association of County VACs. And we've got 3 of them in Cook County, I found out. The ones that I'm working with right now are getting experience, and I hope to have our post officers send them more work where we take the more advanced cases and send them to more experienced VSOs until they can get on board. Know where the food banks are to help veterans. Another thing is when we sell these poppies out on the street, the Post Relief Fund. If you have a veteran that needs help and it's not being a con job, by all means, that Post Relief Fund should be used to help them out. Again, there's every veteran service organization has different programs to help them. VA burial benefits, we're not going to go way into that. That could go on for an hour itself, but you should know them as a veterans or as a service officer, post-service officer. Here's something that's very interesting too. If you have a 10% disability rating or above, the Veterans Readiness and Employment benefit that the VA has is phenomenal. It can help start up a business. It can help a veteran get through school without using their GI Bill. It can help anybody that's trying to make a living. 10% disability rating or above. Another person that sorry he's not here tonight, but the Illinois Attorney General Military and Rights Bureau. I deal with them constantly. They are such a resource. So if you know somebody that's being scammed by these claim sharks or somebody like that, we are the only state that has their own Attorney General, Military and Veterans Rights Bureau. And they're a great bunch of people to work with. Illinois State Benefits. In Illinois, we're rated about the number fourth or fifth for extra benefits that no other state has. I work with my counterparts out there in other states, and we have our tax exemptions, we have licenses for fishing, things like that. There are a lot of things that maybe Chuck will expand on later. And again, there's a lot of other sources. With that, I think we have some questions. I know I covered that really quick, but I don't want to take everybody's entire night here. Any questions?
I don't have a question, but I do have a statement. We were talking about, or you were talking about service officer tools. One good tool, are veterans attorneys who put videos on YouTube. Okay, these are attorneys, veterans attorneys, and my understanding is that if you're denied benefits, you went to your service officer, you made your claim and say you were denied. I think then you can hire a veterans attorney, and but I can't think of the name, but there's one outfit. There's a lot of veteran videos that explain about claims and things like this, and a lot of good information. And these are veterans attorneys that are doing this, and one of them actually has a weekly thing, where people just ask questions and they answer the questions, on a weekly, through a text. That's all I wanted to say.
No, you know what? Look, and of course, my colleagues can answer this too. I have never sent anybody to an attorney, but one of my mentors told me one time that if you had a case that was so complex, okay, that it's going to take all the time for a BSO to take on there, maybe it might be wise to go to an attorney. Of course, you're going to be charged for that. And you have to make sure that they are an accredited attorney with the VA. They have to be accredited. I always say that's the last resort. I think that we've got, I know the service officers here, they're on here tonight as our presenters. I'd feel much more comfortable going to them rather than an attorney, because you got to imagine an attorney can also try to have a case adjudicated and just go on and on and on, because what they're doing is they're going to take that money out of your initial lump sum. So if they got a case that goes on an appeal for 2-3 years and they win it, well, they're going to get a bigger chunk. It's like a trust me game. It's a great question. It's a great question, but that's my understanding. I don't know if anybody else wants to speak to that.
Well, I think a veteran service officer can help you with at least the 3 different appellate options if a claim is denied under the Appeals Modernization Act. So a VSO can help you file a reconsideration. They can help you file a higher level review. They can help you file an appeal to the Board of Veterans Appeals. If you keep appealing and you get all the way up to the Board of Veterans Appeals and the claim is still denied, then I would probably encourage you to reach out to an attorney, because the next higher appellate jurisdiction above the Board of Veterans Appeals is the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, and no VSO has their accreditation isn't recognized by the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, so you would need a private attorney to continue the prosecution of that appeal. So I would hold off on seeking an attorney until you get to that level of an appeal, which is kind of rare.
Well, thank you very much. That's excellent information.
If I could add something, Dutch, this is Mike Corman again.
Sure.
I would just add that you can get a list of who's accredited, the lawyers and whatnot, and accredited agents from the VA Office of Inspector General website. So there is a place where you can actually validate when someone is what they say they are. And I think there's maybe as many as 100 in Illinois that are accredited agents not just attorneys. But the other thing I want to mention, and I experienced this when I was a rater for the VA, there are some law firms and lawyers that will intentionally tell veterans to not agree to any examinations, don't tell the VA anything. And the idea is they don't get paid on initial claims. They can only be paid on subsequent claims, on higher level reviews. So if you go to an accredited agent on an initial claim, they may not have your best interests in mind. Just be cautious is all I would say. Is when I was a rater, I saw veterans, I looked at a lot of service records, and a lot of veterans were taken advantage of and ended up having to pay money that they probably shouldn't have had to pay to those lawyers.
Yep. And that brings us into the claim sharks. This is an epidemic right now in the whole country, and we're trying to get national laws passed, and we're working on this statewide too, to try to get these people that are not accredited and are basically stealing from veterans. But that's another story for another time. If there's no other questions, I'm going to go on to let Chuck speak for a while. Am I saving the best for last, Chuck? I don't know.
No, not really. Not really. Are we going to start with, I would recommend, Dutch, you're the host.
No, whatever you want to do, Chuck.
No, I would recommend that let everybody have a 5-minute break.
Okay.
Go out there and look at the moon, get some fresh air.
All right.
Go to the personal needs or get a drink of
Okay,
water.
I got that.
With a cocktail glass.
Yeah, it's we've been at this a while. It's about 23 after we'll come on board, okay?
Yeah, Army time.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Not Marine time, not Navy time, Army time.
Yeah.
All right.
2023.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
So if anybody's sticking around though, I want to carry off a little bit of what Derek and Mr. Mike, was it Mike that said something about he was a raider? Is he?
Yeah, yes, he's there.
So anybody that's here, I'm going to echo on that. And for
I am here. I just wanted to grab a beverage.
That's fine. I did what Derek was mentioning. Any kind of a claim that's denied, VSOs are trained to advise veterans on a supplemental claim or higher level, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, or an appeal, an outright appeal. There are attorneys out there with do pro bono, but I'm going to agree with Mike and Derek that after an appeal gets to the Board of Veterans Appeals and the board denies based on whatever criteria, then the veteran has an option of, yes, going to the Court of Veterans Appeals. And the only people that can really go there are attorneys. They don't even allow the veteran itself to go there because you're sitting before 3 judges and basically everybody's arguing CFR law. And then it gets a little complex. But good VSOs would be able to assist the veteran to either go with a higher level review or a supplemental claim, because the VA is telling the veteran why they're denying and what they need for a rating. And I'll save the rest for when we come back. Did anybody hear that?
I did.
Yes, we got it.
I thought I was talking to the wall.
I heard you. A lot of good information tonight.
Well,
guys,
you know
I
what?
really,
There is, and I'll tell you what, when I get into my session, Derek will agree. You can be doing this for 12 years, 15 years, and you just don't know everything. You just don't. And you got to be able to recognize where you need to find answers. I work at the regional office along with Derek. I've known him for many years. And I'm always talking to somebody in the VA, always, just to try and get an assessment of what is possible. And in this business, you're really trying to find the best answer for the veteran. That doesn't mean every veteran is correct. Trust me. I mean, Derek will echo that some you got to spot the veterans that are trying to play the game. But that's another story at another time. But it's an interesting career. It's something that's really enjoyable. And I think any VSO, if they're a veteran of combat area, they do this for the people they knew, who they knew, and it's an honorable thing. Well, I'm going to preach it now. What the heck? I'm going to get on soapbox. I don't want to do that. How you doing, Dutch?
I am, I'm great. I'm just happy. I'm very grateful for all the people that showed up tonight. And I hope you take this information and spread the wealth. We're all
we got-
service officers in our own way, and we can go out there and we can help people, and that's what we should always be doing.
Well, we need to be accessible for each other too, because I mean, I was talking to Derek 3 times today.
Yeah.
Not because I miss him, or because not because he's a traitor to the VFW and left them hanging, but he sought a career and he's doing very well being a VSR for the VA. But we talk all the time, and they come down by us, so we share a lot of information.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, if we don't represent the veteran, they're going to tell me a little bit about what I need to know. And there's only so much they could tell me because of privacy issues. But that's enough to at least be able to help the veteran a little bit.
Yeah. I thought I seen Elizabeth Soto had her hand up.
I saw that too.
Elizabeth, are you still with us?
I am. I just wanted to ask a question during the break so it wouldn't take away from the.
No, you're good. Yeah. Ask away, Elizabeth.
How would someone find out if they still have an active initial claim? I'm not quite sure what that's called. When someone initiates a claim and it's been a little over a year, how would someone find out if it's still active or if they have to reapply?
Call the VA.
And that's it. Just speak with someone and
1-800-827-1000. And just that's the call center for the VA. And they could just ask the question and say they want a status of their claim.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
I'll send you a bill for $10.
Oh, wow.
Say that number again.
I also think that you can look it up on the app as well. I'm sorry, Eric Morales, District 4 Commander. I believe if you go on the VA app, because that's what I do on mine, I believe it tells you all your ongoing claims as well as claims that have also passed.
Oh, good.
Anybody, I don't know how e-benefits, I tried it a long time ago for myself and I got frustrated with it. And does anybody else have problems? Because I don't think e-benefits is keeping everything up to date. That's what I hear from veterans, and that's what I see. So yeah, you said the app, that might be good too.
The VA's moved away, to my knowledge, they've moved away from e-benefits more to va.gov.
All right.
And I think, as I recall, it's been a long time, you have to go through and do the ID me process to validate your identity.
Okay.
The other thing I would throw into the mix, and somebody's more knowledgeable about this than me, they're going through a big modernization process for the records between the DoD and the VA this month.
Yes.
And so I'm a Level patient. So the Level Hospital through March and April, middle of April, is going through a major upgrade of the EHRM, the medical record system. So if you're dealing with healthcare issues, just be patient with them as they navigate this, because I think we all know anytime the government tries to do something in their mind that's better, it's not always better for everybody.
Yeah. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Yeah, that's going on. That's the worst words in the world.
Yeah, but it's a big organization, and I think the one thing that VSOs are experiencing that's really frustrating for us is what you're talking about on the DIC claims and the military sexual trauma. They're taking freaking forever.
Yeah.
And because there's only one regional office handling MST, and I think there's only two, if I'm not mistaken, Milwaukee and somewhere else in handling dependency, and they're backlogged. And we just had a directors meeting, a VSO directors meeting in Chicago last week, and we all brought this up and saying, if the VA is swamped in one regional office, why aren't they brokering out some of these claims to other offices that aren't swamped? Because on military sexual trauma, you got a person that has to relive their experience by writing it down and sitting down there and talking about it and providing the 781, like Derek said, and then they got to wait. That's insane. I've got one that was just done. I saw it yesterday. but two others that are over a year and a half long, waiting. That's insane. And that's terrible. That's really terrible. Okay, I did enough preaching.
Okay, we're gonna move on. All right, that was a
Sorry.
good break. No, it's a good idea, Chuck. So I'm gonna share
I
it.
was prophesizing here and I
Yeah.
letting out some steam.
Okay, let's share, and we're
Hey, how do I get this thing?
yeah, we're gonna start out with service connected ratings, percentages, and Chuck will talk about appeals a little bit because that's his specialty. So
Yeah, but you're doing this one, right?
oh, you're doing this one.
I am.
Are we recording this?
Yes, we are.
Oh, okay, because I see the red light
Yeah.
flashing. Okay,
Well,
all right.
I can do this one, Chuck, if you don't want to do it, but you do.
Well, you're not. I'm not getting paid for this. You didn't give me money for this one.
Didn't I? I thought I
No.
did. So anyway.
Well, either or.
Well, anyway, I'll make it. I'll put it simple with all this mumbo jumbo. What
There you
happened? The VA math we talk about, and people just go, you know what? I got 170% compensation. Well, no, you don't. You probably stopped at 100. But what happens is that it's as simple as that. If you have 50% service connected disability, then you go for something else. So say you have your knee is just totally shot and you're getting 50% for it, but now you have a gate on your other knee. And they say, well, we're going to rate that at 20%. Well, what happens is the way the VA works is they figure we're giving you 50%, you have 50% of your body left. So now we're going to say 20% from 50. So basically that 20% disability rating that you got equates to 10% increase. So you'd be at 60%. And that's how it works. So the higher you go up with the disability rating, say if you're at 90%, well, if you get a 10% bump on that for something else, well, it's only 1%. So it doesn't change it at all. So that people get frustrated with it. It works out, but it's not exactly what people really expect. So right now, these are the latest. If you are by yourself as a veteran, and what you have is a disability rating at 10%, it's about $171. 20%, it's $339 roughly, but a dependent doesn't get added to that. So as you go to 30% and you have a one dependent or two dependents, that it goes up. So for a veteran themselves right now, 30% disability rating is about $525, 40%, $755. 50% rating is $1,075, 60%, $1,361, 70%, $1,716. 80% is $1,995, 90% is $2,241. But you'll see a huge jump from 90 to 100. So it goes to $3,737 for 100% disability rating. That's quite a bit. The other thing is with the 100% disability rating, there's some other things that you get. You get Camp VA for your spouse and your dependents, and you also get VA dental. The only way you can get VA dental is to be 100% service connected, or where you have a service connected that has to do with dental. Otherwise, you're not anything else. You are not going to get dental. In Illinois, as you know, we are very lucky. 70% disability rating or above, you do not pay any real estate tax. Okay. And the VRE program, which I talked about before, that's from any disability 10% or higher. The other disability rating is 0%. So you might have a hearing disability, hearing loss, and you are rated at 0%. Well, what that means is that the VA recognizes that this is a service-connected condition and they will treat it, and you have access to the VA healthcare, but they are not going to pay you for it. A lot of these adjudications for hypertension for Vietnam veterans now everybody says, let's go on it. A lot of them are being rated at 0%. If you feel there's a discrepancy, you should put in a letter of disagreement and perhaps an appeal, but I don't want to get into that because that is Chuck's expertise there. Okay.
Am I on? Oh.
And then we're going, yeah,
Oh.
you're going to be next, Chuck. But any questions about what I just talked about?
Dutch, this is Mike Corman again. I just want to throw one thing on that slide. You have it there at the end.
Yeah.
The 10% piece. If you're at 64%, that's 60%. If you're 65%, that's 70%.
Exactly.
And let's just suppose you're at 90% disability. It is really hard. I mean, really hard to get to 100.
Yeah.
If you have 5 things that get you to 90, you might need 5 10s to get you to 95 or ultimately 100.
Yeah.
So the VA math is tricky, and you want to make sure you're, each of the 15 body systems, make sure you're looking for everything that you deserve.
Yeah. And one other thing and thank you very much. The other thing to piggyback off of that is also there's unemployability, which you could have 70, 80%, but they might rate you as unemployable, okay? And that would pay you, you'd have a 70% disability rating, but they would pay you at 100% disability and give you those benefits as well, unless I'm mistaken. Okay.
If I may echo on that, Dutch, for a second before I go on.
Yeah.
I always tell a veteran if they're going to apply for individual unemployability, you got to be really careful because they're going to look, the VA will look at the highest rated disability. And a lot of times it could be the PTSD or the mental health.
Yeah.
And so the VA will look at that and say, okay, we're going to give you an exam for PTSD. And based on that examiner, if the veteran goes in there and he's answering questions in any kind of category, the examiner could say, hey, you show some improvement. We propose to decrease you.
Yeah.
So you got to advise your veterans to work with a VSO so that we can say, look, here's what you got to be cautious of.
Chuck, I'd like to ask you a question on that though.
Who, you?
It's me, yeah. I don't know everything. That's why
Neither do I.
But if you have that disability rating at say for 10 years, would they attack that?
I wouldn't put anything past the VA. I would hesitate to say no, they're not going to touch it because I've seen them touch it.
Okay.
The best guide is if you're over age 55, they won't touch it.
Well, there you go.
But everything else is fair game if the examiner finds something that's improved.
They could, and that's
got to work with a VSO and take that advice. I mean, really. Okay, I'm done.
Right. Chuck, you're up.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Who?
May I ask a question? Can someone, and maybe it's on some of your other slides and I missed it, the homebound rating? Can you tell me more about that?
I can, maybe Derek or Chuck could.
What kind of rating?
Homebound.
Homebound.
So I have a little bit of firsthand experience. This is Mike Corman again. My father-in-law is homebound. I'm actually with him right now down in Florida. And because of Agent Orange exposure and peripheral neuropathy and all the other things he's dealing with, he has a very hard time getting around, and I'm actually caring for him down here. But because my wife is a primary caregiver for him, she receives a stipend each month to care for him in terms of making sure he has proper meals, making sure that his house is clean, making sure that he has the things that he needs to stay in his home, which is the goal. And I think my recollection is it's $1,700 or maybe $1,800 a month that she gets, but that's a special military compensation that's separate from VA disability that you have to apply for separately.
So that's the same as homebound, because I know some veterans who are 100% total and permanent, and they get an additional amount to that 100% TMP, and it's called homebound.
Yeah, you're right. It's a couple $100, not enough to change your life. But if you're also homebound, and you have someone living with you, you can apply for that stipend for that caregiver.
Thank you, sir.
You're up, Chuck.
Thank you. As Dutch said, I'm Chuck Bosco. I work for the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs. My office is located in the VA regional office in Chicago, which is really nice because, as I mentioned earlier, I have an opportunity to talk with a lot of VA employees, especially coaches and people that in different functions. The IDVA, Dutch has some services, benefits, and the veteran homes. Well, I'd like to touch on the homes real quick, and because there's a lot of interest in those. We have 5 homes in Illinois, and Dutch, we have Anna, Quincy, LaSalle, Manteno, and the new home that's located on the northwest side of Chicago. It's a 200-bed facility. And right now we have 1 floor open, and they're starting to open up a 2nd floor. The problem that we have in that home is they can't find enough nurses or healthcare professionals. They advertise consistently, and we're talking about RNs, nurses aides, dietitians, social workers, and they just can't hire enough people. So the veterans that are eligible for that home are the ones that are in the other homes, such as Manteno or LaSalle, and they want to transfer back to Chicago, be near their families. So those veterans are getting first priority. The eligibility standards for our homes is that they have to be an Illinois resident. They have to be a veteran that lives in Illinois. And they have to be the wartime era veterans get first priority. Peacetime veterans get on a waiting list. And then that's really it. And there's waiting lists at all of our homes. There is a monthly fee, but the veteran is never turned away. Whatever they can afford, the VA will, or the Illinois will take that. So and we have service officers in each one of those homes. Some of the IDVA benefits and the services, our VSOs, we have currently, and I wanted to check that out. Let me get to that. We have currently on staff, where is it? I can't find my material.
I think you got about 50 of them now or something.
No, we have 52 accredited VSOs. We have 67 offices statewide. We have we only have 2 appeal specialists. You always had. And right now, based on the number of active appeals we have with the Board of Veterans Appeals, I'm the only one doing appeals right now. And what that means, I'll review the cases and I'll get them ready to go before a veteran law judge, where, like Derek would say, the VSO will attend the hearing with the veteran and guide them through the hearing. And what we do is we review the claim file entirely, just to make sure that what was missed, did the VA miss anything, did the veteran miss anything, and then we'll sit at the hearing with them. What else? As I talked about, as we go through each one, I want to be able to have any questions. Are there any questions regarding our homes? No.
I know there's beds open in Chicago, that's all.
I know but we have 1 floor complete. Each floor has their own kitchenette, their own sauna room, and a bay area to socialize in. And like I said, if anybody's familiar with Chicago, it's on Oak Park Avenue between Montrose and Irving Park, northwest side of Chicago. Okay, no questions on the homes.
And
can we get to the one thing for IDVA services, Dutch? Oh, there you go, claim development. Yeah. So what that means is the veterans, right now, all of our offices work on appointment only. And what that means, a veteran has to call and we'll set up an appointment to come in. Prior to COVID, everybody would go to our service offices and just sit in the lobby and wait till the VSO can help them. Right now, so claim development, as everybody was talking earlier, Russ was saying something, Derek was saying some information. I do some claim development, just to keep in touch with it. But like I said, most of my time is spent reviewing cases. So when veteran calls to me and they say they want to file a claim, I'm going to tell them, let's come in, you bring any kind of military documentation you have, bring in any kind of medical records you have, and I'll ask them for a marriage license, divorce, and dependent information, because when I send the claim in, I send everything in. Because as Russ said earlier, if a veteran is rated at 30% or more, the VA will allow extra money for each dependent. Case in point, we put a claim in, the veteran gets 30%. They already have the dependent information, so they'll start paying the veteran right away. If the veteran files a claim for dependency, that's a claim, but the VA basically looks at it as saying, our priority is to the veteran and get them service connected. We will get to the family later when we get to it. Am I right, Derek? Yeah, okay. So I put everything together at one time. That said, bonuses. We do have a war bonus. And basically for World War II, all the wars, it's a one-time payment of $100. And basically that was for Vietnam, Korea, Desert Storm, and the current conflict, global war on terrorism. The criteria, of course, is the veteran has to have a campaign ribbon to show that they were in that participation of the war. In other words, if a guy's in Germany during Desert Storm, no. But if the guy was served in that wartime era or in that campaign, then they'll get the $100. And it's a 2-page document, and we just go ahead and file it. And I always tell people, when you file it, since it's a state benefit, when the state has money, they'll give you $100. So, World War II, they get $10 per month that they served. So if the guy served for 5 years, well, what, $60 or $600? Education, this is a big topic. Illinois Veterans Grant is something that is managed by the Illinois Student Assistance Commission. I tell veterans that grant will take care of any state-funded school or community college, and they'll pay the tuition and certain fees. I always tell veterans, use the GI Bill first, because that is a 10-year or 15-year time window where they have to use it. And use that one first, because the Illinois Veterans Grant, there's no time limit. They get 4 years, they get 4 years of school. And I'll tell them either use it for a master's degree or a doctorate, because no matter what you're going for, they'll pay that tuition. So if a person going for a master's, that's a great tool. That's a great benefit to have. But again, it's got to be a state-funded school. No Northwestern or University of Chicago. So if you're going to try and get yourself some kind of award, stay away from them. MIA POW scholarship. That is for dependents. And basically, it's not just POW MIA anymore. A long time ago, Illinois shifted that to anybody that's 100% permanent total. And that means that every child or the wife can go to college. And again, state-funded school. So if you have a veteran and they have 3 or 4 kids and they want their kids to go to college and they're 100% permanent total, there you go. It's a great program for families. Hunting, fishing, and camping. We do this for the Department of Natural Resources. If a veteran is 10% or more, they can get a hunting and fishing license, which means that it's free. I tell people, though, if they're going to go hunting, if they're going to get a deer tag, they still have to pay for the deer tag, or a muskie, you still have to get a tag. But the hunting and fishing license is free, and it's 2-year limit. So every 2 years, they have to go back and renew it. And all they need basically is that once we have a DD-14, the veteran just needs to have a current award letter showing what their percentage is. And that they get from the VA. The camping fee is for any state park, whether it be, I always like to use the one that's down there in LaSalle, what is that? With the Starved Rock, or up there in Waukegan, State Park Beach. The camping fee is waived, but if you have a trailer, any hookups are still on the assessment of the individual. But we do this for them, and we keep track of all that. Next slide there, Dutch. We talked, okay, this is big, and Dutch covered it a little bit. But, everybody wants to get to that 70% or the 100. And again, in the state of Illinois, there's no real estate tax. In fact, I have 2 people today that I helped. Every county, though, and Dutch, you know this, some counties are still giving people a hard time. They still, and
that's a battle we're fighting down in Springfield.
Yeah. It's insane. It's a state law. But the veteran needs to have their DD 214. You need a 214 for everything you do. And they need an assessment letter, a current, you can't take the rating decision, because the rating decision has personal information and medical information on it, and that's privacy. All they have to do is I always tell a veteran, get a summary of benefits letter. There's 5 different letters that the VA will give for people showing their percentages. Some have the amount of money they're getting, some have the illnesses. You don't want that. The summary of benefits letter is basically what is their percentage, what was the effective date of it, is it permanent total, they'll have that information on there. And they need to take that plus their DD 214 to their county assessor. And I always tell people, don't mail it, don't do it on the internet. Get over to that office of the assessors, get a copy of everything, submit what you have to submit, get a stamped copy and keep it in your file. Because counties, especially Cook County, you just don't want to take your chances. You don't want to take anything for granted with them. But yes, there'll be no real estate tax. And one thing about this, and now Dutch, you can cover this a little more in detail because you're the guru on this. But when a person is, if you're 100% not permanent total, you got to refile every year. If you're 100% permanent total in Cook County, I don't know what the other counties.
Well, by state law, there's a law now, Chuck, that says.
Well, wait, let me finish.
Okay.
I just want to say, if you're 100% permanent total, you don't have to file every year. It's going to be automatic. Go ahead, Dutch.
Well, and you're right. The other thing is that we're having another law was passed where, again, with DIC, if you are a surviving spouse and you are getting DIC, you do not have to pay real estate tax. That's a recent law, even if it wasn't at any time now. So what happens is we've had some spouses that have been having a hard time with the assessors. And the assessors say, well, no, you don't get this. And they're looking at the old law. So what I do is I refer them to the Attorney General, and the Attorney General will call that assessor and figure things out.
Yeah, it's, I don't want to say anybody's doing it intentionally. I just think there's, with all laws, there's ways to misunderstand lawyer talk and lawyer dialogue.
Yeah.
But that is a terrific, when you stop and think about the terrific benefit it is for a widow. I mean, she won't lose her home. I mean, if the house is paid off, and some of these homes, you can't afford the taxes. And so from like Dutch is saying, a service-connected disability and the woman is eligible for this real estate exemption, that's fantastic. And I think I think Illinois is one of the few states that will do that.
They are, Chuck. They are.
Next slide, Dutch, or am I done?
Okay.
Well, oh yeah, okay. What's the next? Oh, okay. So you got Purple Heart, you got these license plates.
Yeah.
Basically, you just need the 214 and your just summary of benefits letter. For all these plates, you just go to your local motor vehicle place and you show this. And especially if you want to get a veterans on your driver's license. Yeah. When this came out in 2015, the Secretary of State wanted our agency to look at the 214s to make sure that they were good. Now, everybody remembers the old DD 14s that look like sloppy and they're in different fonts and some stuff looks like it was whited out and they were crazy. People got pretty ingenious trying to figure out, how do I turn a dishonorable into an honorable or other general into an honorable? But that's what we would look at. So essentially, the veteran was coming to our office. We would stamp it saying, yeah, we looked at it. It's a good DD 214. And they go to your department or motor vehicle area. Well, now the process is they just take their DD 214 to a Secretary of State driver's place, apply, they'll get a temporary license, and that department or motor vehicle place will send that DD 214 to our office in Springfield. We have people down in Springfield that look at the records and they'll say, yes, this is a good DD 214, and they'll send it back to the Secretary of State, and then the veteran gets veteran on their driver's license or state ID. That's that. Purple Heart, yes, if you have a Purple Heart and you got to show your DD 214, you don't have to have a percentage. You just have a Purple Heart, and you'll get the first plate is free, and it's every year the renewal sticker is free. If you want another Purple Heart for another vehicle, then you got to pay for that. All these other ones, these disability, there's a form that needs to be filled out that's from the VA, and your doctor has to fill out the form for disability and why you need this, then 50%, and you get the plates or the placard. Okay, anything else? Veteran, here. I saw this one, Vietnam veteran survivors. So, as I mentioned, if the veteran never applied when they came home for that war, we call it the war bonus of $100. If the veteran never did this, the veteran passes away, the spouse is entitled a one-time payment. I think it's $300, and she can apply for that. But if the veteran got the $100 before, she's not eligible. So that's something else that's out there.
And
Next slide. Any other slides?
They only count one war if you try to go for the bonus.
Yeah.
I tried that.
Well, we talked about the homes.
Yeah, here's about the homes.
Okay, what else? Anything
I
else?
think that is questions.
all
Any
right.
more questions here? And I'm just gonna slow one more slide. Okay, and then if you have some comments about tonight's program, please email me, the good, the bad, the ugly. Tell me what you thought. If we're gonna do this again, we wanna know how to improve. So please Comcast, real easy, Dutch23MP@comcast.net. And,
Do I have any comments, or do I have any questions before everybody goes away?
well, we're gonna ask, we got questions now too, so we can do questions.
Yes, sir. Anybody, for me? No.
Right. Is everybody worn out here?
Hey, Chuck?
Yes, who? Yes.
Hey. Up here in
I
the
see you
corner.
waving up there, yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Hello, Kate.
so, how do we get a hold of Derek if we need to, or just get a hold of you first, or?
Well, if you want to get a hold of Derek, you got to go to the FBI wanted list. And
No.
You heard that he's
No.
working at the Chicago regional office, and the FBI building is on the next block away from us on Roosevelt Road. So they'll just run right over.
No, that's okay. I don't need to do it that way.
Okay. No, if you want to get a hold of Derek, you'd have to call Derek, the call center, and then have a message sent to you.
Is that the 202 or 745-8000 or the other one?
I'm going to give that to Derek.
Yeah, 1-800-827-1000 is the phone number, and then I put my email in the chat.
1-800-827-2000?
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't want to bore everybody else with my question because it doesn't really pertain to this part tonight.
I'd like to give everybody my email in case they want to send stones or rocks or something. But it's okay. So it's Charles.Bosco at Illinois.gov, and you have to spell that out.
Dutch, may I ask you a question, please?
Yes.
Would you be able to, I'm looking at the chat and there's a lot of contact information people have put in there. Could you create maybe a one-page directory with everybody's name and contact info?
Oh,
And
yeah,
then
that would be nice.
questions on what right
I
to.
don't know if I can, well, let me see what I can do here.
There's a lot of these.
What I'll do is, hold on. Oh, it won't let me. It won't let me copy and paste all of the comments.
I'm not saying tonight, like maybe during the week. I know you have,
You should be
weekend.
able to save.
I can give you the contact emails and stuff of everybody.
Right.
Okay. That you let me know what emails you want, and because that I have.
Chuck, Mike Corman again. I just want to throw in something about the tax exemption, which is this. My assessor of my township was fantastic. She has a lot of experience with it, and she did a great job getting it in, and it was lickety split. So use the resources that are available at the different levels of government that we have here.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I've had some problems with some surviving spouses where I've had to call my friends down at the Attorney General to get involved. And once the Attorney General calls the assessor goes, "Oh, I guess you're right. It is a state law." But we have to go like that sometimes. Kate, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask one more thing about, gosh darn it. Yeah, forgot let me come back to it.
I'll
I'll put my
on the
hand down.
same page. Yeah, I'm there. You know, in case hopefully I'm going to get this online, this whole video that I think will be useful for you to share with other people. We've already got one on our website that's training for post-service officers. It's a little shorter. It's about 2 hours. We've been at this a little longer. This was a little bit in depth. I have to apologize. I crammed a bit too much, I think, in this workshop, but you can send me a comment saying, "Dutch, don't do that anymore." I want to just thank everybody for coming tonight and our presenters. And I got my buddy, my partner from Vietnam's on here, John Crawley, calling from the East Coast. So I'm happy to see him, and I hope he can use it. He'll use this as a weapon out there in the New Jersey, Philadelphia area. So I think it's been informative. And again, take all of this that you learned tonight. You're not going to retain everything, but you know how to get it and where to go to. And we're always available, post-service officers, Tom and I, for the 4th district. And we have a lot of other districts on here. Always call us. Tom and I will help you in a heartbeat. And Chuck and Derek, and we're all there for veterans. So don't feel bad about reaching out. We get calls all the time. Any other comments?